Without warning, Council saw humanity's predator instinct Part 1. The soft ones, the survey ship Meridians. Light drifted through the outer edges of an unremarkable star system. Inside, Survey Commander Thaxel studied the readings with mild interest. His four eyes blinked in sequence as data scrolled across the holographic display. He was a Velen, tall and crystalline, his body refracting the ship's interior lights into scattered rainbows. His species had been exploring the galaxy for 3,000 years, cataloging worlds and civilizations with methodical precision. This system had one planet in the habitable zone. Sensors showed abundant water, oxygen-rich atmosphere, and primitive electromagnetic signals emanating from the surface. Another developing species, Thaxel thought, without much enthusiasm. The galaxy was full of them. Most never made it past their own atmosphere before destroying themselves with wars or environmental collapse. Still, protocol demanded investigation. He initiated a deeper scan and waited. The data that returned made his crystalline structure flicker with surprise. The planet was teeming with life, more biodiversity than most worlds he had surveyed. And the dominant species, the ones generating those electromagnetic signals, they were interesting in their own way. Bipedal mammals, no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, no venom, no size advantage. They stood barely 6 feet tall on average. Their teeth were flat and dull. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. Thaxel ran the data through the Galactic Federation's classification algorithms. The result came back quickly. Class D, non-threatening herbivore, derivative, minimal survival adaptations, low threat potential. He nodded to himself. Another species of gentle gatherers who had stumbled into basic technology. They called themselves humans, and they called their world Earth. Thaxel filed the report and moved on to the next system. He never imagined that report would change the galaxy forever. 6 months later, Commander Sarah Chen stood in the cargo bay of Earth's first interstellar vessel, the Odyssey. She was 42 years old with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and brown eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 20 years in the military before transitioning to diplomatic service. She knew how to fight, how to negotiate, and how to read people. Or in this case, aliens. Her team assembled around her, checking equipment one final time. Dr. Marcus Webb was adjusting his glasses nervously. He was a biologist, thin and energetic, with red hair that never stayed combed. He had volunteered for this mission the moment it was announced, eager to study alien life. Captain James Rodriguez stood nearby, his muscular frame relaxed but alert. He was a career soldier, 45 years old, with dark skin and calm gray eyes. He commanded Earth's security detail for the mission. 12 soldiers who had trained for every scenario they could imagine. The Galactic Federation had sent a ship to retrieve them 3 days ago. The aliens had been polite but distant, treating the humans like curious children. Sarah had noted everything, the way they looked at human weapons with amusement, the way they spoke slowly, as if addressing someone simple, the casual dismissal in their body language. She said nothing. She smiled and thanked them for their hospitality. Inside, she was recording every detail for the intelligence reports she would file later. The Federation headquarters was located on a space station called Unity Prime. It orbited a neutron star in neutral space, equidistant from the major galactic powers. The station was enormous, large enough to house millions of beings from hundreds of different species. When the Odyssey docked, Sarah and her team were escorted through corridors filled with aliens of every imaginable type. Creatures made of gas floated past beings of living metal. Something that looked like a walking tree nodded at them with a face carved into its bark. Dr. Webb was practically vibrating with excitement. His scanner recording everything. They were brought to the council chamber, a vast amphitheater where representatives from 200 species gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Sarah walked to the center platform with her head high and her shoulders back. She wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder. She carried no weapons. The aliens in the gallery looked down at her with expressions she was beginning to recognize. Curiosity mixed with condescension. They saw something small and soft and harmless. High Counselor Vernock called the session to order. He was a Korath, a species of intelligent reptiles that stood 8 feet tall on powerful legs. His scales were deep green, and his eyes were golden with vertical pupils. He had led the Federation for 60 years and had welcomed dozens of new species into the fold. He looked at Sarah Chen, the way a teacher might look at a kindergarten student giving their first presentation. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Vrenok said. His voice was deep and resonant, translated into English by technology Sarah did not fully understand yet. "You have been evaluated according to our standards and found suitable for provisional membership. We are pleased to offer you a place in our community." Sarah bowed her head slightly. "We are honored, High Counselor. Humanity's eager to learn from the great civilizations represented here. We come in peace and friendship, seeking knowledge and cooperation." It was a speech she had rehearsed 100 times. Every word was calculated to sound humble and grateful. Inside, she was analyzing everything. The council's seating arrangement, who sat close to whom, who spoke, and who remained silent. The subtle hierarchies that governed this place. The council spent 3 hours discussing humanity's classification and assignment. Sarah listened as various species debated Earth's value to the Federation. The Velans presented their survey data, showing human physical limitations. The Zektar Empire's representative, a massive reptilian warrior named Commander Vrektos, laughed openly at human military capabilities. "Look at them," he said, pointing at Captain Rodriguez with one clawed hand. "No armor, no natural weapons. A Zektar hatchling could defeat their strongest warrior." His statement drew amused sounds from several other species. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Beside her, she could feel Rodriguez tense slightly, then relax. He had excellent self-control. Dr. Webb was taking notes, completely absorbed in studying the alien physiology around them. He showed no reaction to the insults. He was too fascinated by the biology to care about the politics. The council's decision was announced by High Counselor Vrenok. Humanity would be granted provisional membership for a trial period of 50 Earth years. They would be assigned a colony world in the outer territories, far from established trade routes and wealthy systems. The world was designated as Nova Terra in the human records. It was habitable, but barely, with thin atmosphere, limited water, and minimal natural resources. It was the kind of world the Federation gave to species they did not expect to succeed. "We are grateful for this opportunity," Sarah said, bowing again. "We will prove worthy of the Federation's faith in us." She smiled warmly, playing the role of the grateful primitive. The council members nodded approvingly. They liked it when new species knew their place. The formal proceedings ended, and Sarah's team was given quarters on the station while preparations were made for the journey to Nova Terra. That night, in the privacy of their secured room, Sarah held her first real meeting with her core team. She activated a device that Dr. Webb had designed, a signal jammer that prevented outside surveillance. Only then did she speak freely. "Thoughts," she said, looking at each person in turn. Dr. Webb went first. "Fascinating biology. The Korath have redundant organs, incredibly tough scales. The Velans are silicon-based, extremely resistant to temperature changes. The Zektar are pure muscle and aggression, built for combat. But they all have weaknesses. Everything has weaknesses." He pulled up his notes on a tablet. The Korath rely heavily on visual hunting. Bright, strobing lights would disorient them. The Velans are vulnerable to specific sonic frequencies that disrupt their crystalline structure. The Zektar have poor endurance. They are sprint predators, not distance runners. Captain Rodriguez nodded slowly. Their military formations are impressive, but rigid. They expect direct confrontation. The Zektar especially, they fight like ancient Romans, overwhelming force applied directly. They would struggle against guerrilla tactics or asymmetric warfare. He paused. They have no concept of what human soldiers can endure. They think we are weak because we are not physically imposing. Sarah leaned back in her chair. They underestimate us. That is an advantage, but it is also dangerous. If they see us as worthless, they will not hesitate to discard us or worse. We need to be careful. She looked at her team carefully. Our mission has changed. We came here to join the galactic community. Now I realize we came here to survive it. We smile, we learn, and we prepare. Over the following weeks, Sarah met with representatives from various species. She asked questions constantly, always humble, always curious. She learned about Federation politics, trade agreements, military alliances, and historical conflicts. She discovered that the galaxy was not the peaceful utopia that humanity had imagined. It was competitive and often brutal. Strong species dominated weak ones. Resources flowed to those with power. Wars were common, though usually limited to border disputes and economic conflicts. The Zektar Empire controlled a significant portion of the galaxy's military might. They were conquerors by nature, expanding constantly, absorbing weaker species into their domain. They respected strength and despised weakness. Commander Vrektos made a point of visiting Sarah one afternoon. He towered over her, 9 feet of scaled muscle and predatory grace. His yellow eyes studied her with open disdain. "I wanted to see the human leader up close," he said. "To understand what kind of creature leads such a fragile species." Sarah met his gaze calmly. She did not flinch or look away. "We may be fragile, Commander, but we have survived on our world for a long time. We adapt well." Vrektos snorted. "Adaptation is for prey animals. Predators dominate through strength. Your kind will learn this quickly once you reach your new world. The territories you have been given, they are not safe. Pirates, raiders, territorial disputes. The Federation sends weak species there to see if they can survive. Most do not." Sarah smiled pleasantly. "Then we will need to be careful. Thank you for the warning, Commander." Vrektos stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. His heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Captain Rodriguez appeared from a side passage where he had been listening. "That was a threat," he said quietly. Sarah nodded. "Yes, it was. He is telling us that the Zektar will be watching Nova Terra. They are predators looking for easy prey." Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure we are not easy prey." 6 months after first contact, the human convoy arrived at Nova Terra. 15 ships carried 50,000 colonists, along with equipment, supplies, and everything needed to establish a permanent settlement. Sarah stood on the bridge of the lead ship and looked down at her new world. It was beautiful in its own harsh way. Red deserts stretched across continents. Thin forests clung to river valleys. The atmosphere was breathable but thin, requiring humans to adjust slowly. The gravity was slightly higher than Earth's, which would make everyone stronger over time. Dr. Webb had already identified several native species that could be used for food and agriculture. Governor Harrison Blake was in charge of the colony's establishment. He was 58 years old, practical and experienced, with gray hair and weathered features. He had built cities in hostile environments on Earth and Mars. He knew how to make impossible situations work. He stood beside Sarah, studying the planet below. "It is not what we hoped for," he said honestly, "but it is ours. We will make it work." Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder. "Make it more than work, Harrison. Make it a fortress. Build everything with defense in mind. Redundant systems, hidden facilities, evacuation protocols. Train every colonist in basic combat and survival. Do it quietly. Call it cultural preservation or emergency preparedness. But make sure that when trouble comes, and it will come, we are ready." Harrison looked at her with new understanding. "You think they will attack us?" Sarah nodded slowly. "The Zektar see us as weak. Weak things get eaten in this galaxy. So we need to make sure that when they try to eat us, they break their teeth." Harrison smiled grimly. "Understood. I will build us a fortress that looks like a farm." Over the next 15 years, Nova Terra grew. Cities rose from the red desert, their buildings designed with defensive positions and hidden weapons. Farms spread across the river valleys, but beneath the fields were underground bunkers and supply caches. Schools taught children mathematics and literature, but also survival skills and tactical thinking. Dr. Webb established a research facility that became the most advanced biological lab in human space. He studied every alien species the Federation had encountered. mapping their strengths and cataloging their vulnerabilities. His reports were classified at the highest level, shared only with Earth's military command and key colonial leaders. Captain Rodriguez trained a militia that eventually numbered 20,000 soldiers. They drilled constantly, practicing scenarios that ranged from natural disasters to full-scale invasion. They studied every recorded battle in galactic history, learning from victories and defeats alike. They developed tactics, specifically designed to counter the fighting styles of various alien species. Sarah returned to Unity, Prime as Earth's permanent ambassador. She attended council sessions, voted on resolutions, and maintained humanity's public image as grateful, harmless members of the Federation. She made friends with representatives from smaller species, building quiet alliances. She learned which counselors could be trusted and which ones saw humans as disposable. And she watched the Zektar Empire. Their expansion continued unchecked. They conquered 3 minor species during those 15 years, absorbing their worlds and enslaving their populations. The Federation protested but took no action. The Council was unwilling to challenge Zektar military might. Commander Vrektos was promoted to war leader, commanding the Empire's expansion fleets. He visited Novaterra twice during those years, his ships passing through the system on their way to other campaigns. Each time, his ships performed aggressive scans of the colony's defenses. Each time, they saw exactly what humans wanted them to see. Minimal military infrastructure, outdated weapons, a small defense force that trained poorly. Sarah made sure the Zektar saw a target, not a threat. On the 15th anniversary of Novaterra's founding, Sarah received a message from Dr. Webb. It was encoded and marked urgent. She read it in her private quarters aboard Unity Prime, her expression growing grim. The Zektar were mobilizing a major fleet. Intelligence suggested they were planning to expand into the outer territories. The region where Novaterra and 3 other minor colonies existed. The war leader had decided it was time to claim these worlds and remove these weak species from the galactic stage. Sarah sent immediate warnings to Governor Blake and Captain Rodriguez. She also requested an emergency session with the Federation Council. When she stood before them 2 days later, she presented the evidence of Zektar military buildup. She requested Federation protection for Novaterra and the other threatened colonies. The debate lasted 6 hours. Some species argued for intervention. The Velans, who had initially surveyed Earth, spoke in favor of protecting newer members. But the majority remained silent or argued against action. High Counselor Vernock delivered the Council's decision with obvious discomfort. Ambassador Chen, the Federation cannot intervene in every territorial dispute. The Zektar claimed that the outer territories were never properly assigned. This is a legal matter that must be resolved through negotiation, not military action. Sarah stood very still. Her voice was calm when she spoke. So humanity is on our own. Vrenek spread his clawed hands apologetically. The Federation encourages peaceful resolution. We hope the Zektar will see reason. Sarah bowed her head. Thank you, High Counselor. Humanity will remember the Federation's position. She turned and walked out of the council chamber. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations starting. Some species sounded sympathetic. Others sounded satisfied that the upstart humans would finally learn their place. Back in her quarters, Sarah sent a single encrypted message to Novaterra. 3 words that she and Governor Blake had agreed upon years ago. The Predator awakens. On Novaterra, alarms began to sound. Not panic alarms, but alert tones that every colonist recognized from countless drills. They moved quickly and calmly to their assigned positions. Children were taken to underground shelters. Civilians reported 2 defensive stations. The militia activated and moved to their combat positions. Captain Rodriguez stood in the command center built deep beneath Novaterra's capital city. Around him, holographic displays showed the colony's true defensive capabilities. Weapon systems that had been hidden for 15 years powered up. Ships that had appeared old and slow revealed upgraded engines and weapons. Soldiers who had seemed poorly trained moved with the precision of elite forces. Governor Blake appeared on the communications screen, all civilians secure. All defensive systems online. We are ready, Captain. Rodriguez nodded. Then we wait for them to make their move. In orbit around the Zektar home world, war leader Vrektos addressed his fleet commanders. 50 warships hung in formation, each one carrying thousands of warriors. They were the pride of the Empire. Vessels that had crushed dozens of enemies. The outer territories contained 4 weak colonies, Vrektos said. 3 of them will surrender immediately when they see our fleet. The 4th, the humans on Novaterra, they will try to resist. He showed an image of Sarah Chen on the display. This human female has been requesting help from the Federation. They have been denied. The humans have no allies, no protection, and no hope. We will make an example of them. Show the galaxy what happens to weak species who refuse to bow to superior strength. His commanders roared their approval. The fleet would depart in 3 days. It would take 2 weeks to reach the outer territories. Then the conquest would begin. Vrektos looked at the image of Sarah Chen one last time. He remembered meeting her years ago, how she had smiled and spoken softly, showing no challenge to his superiority. Humans were exactly what he had always known they were, prey animals, soft, weak, and about to be extinct. He shut off the display and went to prepare his warriors. In 3 weeks, Novaterra would belong to the Zektar Empire, or so he believed. The gathering stormed the message reached Unity Prime through back channels that few species knew existed. A Velen trader who owed Sarah Chen a favor intercepted Zektar military communications and forwarded them immediately. Sarah read the decoded intelligence in her quarters, her face illuminated by the pale blue glow of the data screen. The Zektar fleet would arrive at Novaterra in 18 days. 50 warships, 200,000 warriors. Vrektos himself commanding the invasion force. She sent the information to Earth immediately, then sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. 15 years of preparation were about to be tested. 15 years of smiling through insults, accepting condescension, playing the role of the grateful primitive. All of it had been leading to this moment. She had known it would come eventually. Predators always revealed themselves. The only question had been when. Her door chimed. She opened it to find Ambassador Thulix standing outside. He was a Muravi, one of the smaller species in the Federation, barely 4 feet tall with gray skin and large, intelligent eyes. His people had been conquered twice in their history before the Federation granted them protection. He understood what it meant to be seen as weak. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Sarah stepped aside and let him enter. She reactivated her signal jammer before speaking. "You have heard," she said. It was not a question. Thulix nodded, his expression sad. The Zektar make no secret of their plans. They boast about it openly in the council halls. They say they will crush Novaterra in a single day and enslave any humans who survive. Most species believe them. "I am sorry, Ambassador Chen. The Federation has failed you." Sarah poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to Thulix. "The Federation did exactly what we expected it to do. Nothing." She sat down across from him. "Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about Earth's history?" Thulix looked confused by the question. "Very little. Your people were classified as non-threatening. There is no reason to study your past in detail." Sarah smiled slightly. "That was your first mistake. Earth is a world of predators. Our planet evolved thousands of species designed to hunt and kill. Humans survived by becoming better predators than everything else. We did not have claws or armor or venom, so we developed something more dangerous. We developed intelligence, cooperation, and persistence." She pulled up images on her screen showing Earth's history. Thulix watched as humans hunted animals across continents, tracked prey for days without stopping, worked together to bring down creatures 10 times their size. "We are persistence predators," Sarah explained. "We do not kill quickly. We chase our prey until it cannot run anymore. We wound it and follow the blood trail. We work in packs, coordinating without words, and we never, ever give up." Thulix stared at the images. "The Federation classified you as herbivores." Sarah's smile grew colder. "The Federation made assumptions based on our appearance. Soft skin, small teeth, no visible weapons. They saw what they wanted to see. We let them." She leaned forward. When the Zektar attack Nova Terra, they are going to learn something important about humanity. We are not prey. We are apex predators who have been pretending to be sheep. On Nova Terra, preparations entered their final phase. Captain Rodriguez stood in the war room with his senior officers, reviewing the defense plan one last time. His second-in-command, Major Elena Vasquez, pointed to the holographic display showing the colony's layout. The Zektar will expect to land here, here, and here, she said, indicating the 3 largest cities. They will deploy ground forces to secure major population centers while their fleet establishes orbital superiority. Standard conquest doctrine. Rodriguez nodded. So we give them what they expect. Empty cities. We evacuate all civilians to the underground shelters 48 hours before they arrive. When they land, they find nothing but buildings. Major Chen, a tactical officer with no relation to Ambassador Chen, spoke up. They will spread out to search for us. That is when we hit them. The cities are mined and trapped. Every building, every street, every vehicle we leave behind, when they move through the urban areas, we detonate. Colonel James Park, head of the Militia Special Operations Division, added his perspective. Our sniper teams will be positioned in the hills surrounding each city. We let them land, let them spread out, then we start picking them off. Long-range kills from positions they cannot easily reach. We make them paranoid, make them see threats everywhere. Major Vasquez continued the briefing. Meanwhile, in space, we reveal our upgraded fleet. The 20 ships they know about are just the beginning. We have 40 more hidden in the asteroid belt disguised as mining operations. When their fleet engages our visible ships, the hidden fleet hits them from behind. Rodriguez studied the plan carefully. Everything depended on timing and discipline. The Zektar had to believe they were winning right up until the moment they realized they were losing. It is a good plan, he said finally. But remember, plans never survive contact with the enemy. Stay flexible, adapt, trust your training, and trust each other. His officers nodded. They had trained together for 15 years. They knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. They were ready. Governor Blake was managing the civilian evacuation. 50,000 people needed to disappear underground without causing panic or attracting Zektar attention. He had spent years preparing for this, designing shelters that could sustain the entire population for months if necessary. Each shelter had its own power, water, food supplies, and air recycling systems. They were connected by tunnels that allowed movement between locations without surfacing. It was an underground city hidden beneath the visible one. The evacuation happened in stages over 3 days. Families reported to their assigned shelters as if it were another drill. Children who had grown up practicing this procedure did not panic. Teachers and community leaders kept everyone calm and organized. Within 72 hours, the surface cities were empty. Only the militia remained. Soldiers who had said goodbye to their families and taken up positions in buildings and bunkers throughout the urban areas. Dr. Webb was in his laboratory, making final preparations. His research over the past 15 years had produced several innovations that would surprise the Zektar. He had developed chemical compounds that disrupted reptilian nervous systems without harming mammals. He had created acoustic weapons tuned to frequencies that caused disorientation in Zektar warriors. He had mapped every biological weakness of every major species in the Federation. Now his work would be field-tested. His assistant, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, was loading the chemical weapons into deployment systems. These will give us an edge, she said, but they are not enough to win the battle by themselves. Webb nodded. Nothing we have is enough by itself, but together, combined with our tactics and our soldiers' abilities, it becomes a package the Zektar cannot counter. We are not trying to fight them on their terms. We are creating an entirely new battlefield, where their advantages become disadvantages. Ambassador. Chen remained on Unity Prime, maintaining the illusion that humanity was desperately seeking help. She filed formal protests with the Federation Council, requesting emergency sessions, pleading for intervention. The Council debated endlessly while doing nothing. Some species genuinely wanted to help, but lacked the military power. Others were content to watch the humans be destroyed. A few, like the Zektar's allies, actively supported the coming invasion. High Counselor. Vrenek called Sarah to his private chambers 3 days before the Zektar. Fleet was scheduled to arrive at Novaterra. She found him standing by a massive window that looked out at the stars. He looked older than she remembered, his scales less vibrant, his movements slower. "Ambassador Chen," he said without turning, "I want you to know that I argued for Federation intervention. I believe what is happening to your people is wrong." Sarah stood beside him, looking at the same stars. "But you were outvoted." Vrenek nodded slowly. "The majority believes that the Federation cannot afford to antagonize the Zektar Empire over one colony world. The political cost is too high." He finally looked at her, his golden eyes sad. "I am sorry. Your species deserved better than this." Sarah met his gaze calmly. "High Counselor, do you know why humans smile when we are afraid?" Vrenek looked confused by the question. "No, I do not. Because on Earth, showing fear attracts predators. So we learn to hide it. We smile to confuse our enemies, to make them think we are not a threat." She smiled now, but there was nothing warm in it. "For 15 years, I have been smiling at this council. Do you know what that means?" Before Vrenek could answer, Sarah turned and walked toward the door. When she reached it, she looked back one last time. "It means we have been afraid of you, High Counselor. And when humans are afraid, we prepare. You're about to see what 15 years of human preparation looks like." She left him standing alone by the window, staring after her with dawning realization. The Zektar fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nova. Terra system right on schedule. War leader Vrektos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. Long-range scans showed minimal activity. Some ships in orbit, power signatures from the major cities, nothing concerning. It was exactly what he had expected. Weak prey trying to hide, send the surrender demand, he ordered. Give them 1 hour to respond. If they refuse, we begin orbital bombardment. His communications officer sent the message. It was delivered to the human defense fleet and broadcast across all frequencies. "This is war leader Vrektos of the Zektar Empire. The world you call Novaterra now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately and submit to Zektar authority. Any resistance will be met with total annihilation. You have 1 hour to comply." Captain Rodriguez received the message in the command center. Around him, his officers waited for his response. He looked at the chronometer on the wall, counting down the hour the Zektar had given them. Then he looked at his second-in-command. "Major Vasquez, please send our reply." She smiled and opened a communication channel. "War leader Vrektos, this is the Novaterra Defense Force. Your demand is rejected. If you want our world, come and take it." The channel closed. On the Crimson Fang, Vrektos stared at the communication console in disbelief. No species had ever rejected a Zektar surrender demand so directly. It was not just a refusal, it was a challenge. His warriors around the bridge began roaring with excitement. The prey wanted to fight. That would make the conquest more satisfying. "Very well," Vrektos said, his voice cold with anger. "All ships, advance to attack formation. Destroy the human fleet, then begin landing operations. Show these mammals what happens when they defy the Empire." The Zektar fleet moved forward. 50 warships in perfect formation. They had overwhelming firepower and superior numbers. This would be over quickly. The 20 human ships in orbit moved to intercept, their formation loose and uncoordinated. The Zektar commanders noted this with satisfaction. The humans did not even know how to form proper battle lines. In the command center, Major Vasquez watched the enemy fleet approach. She was tracking their positions on multiple screens, watching their formation tighten. "They are moving exactly as predicted," she said. Captain Rodriguez nodded. "Signal the hidden fleet. Execute Phase 1 in the asteroid belt beyond Novaterra." 40 ships that had been disguised as mining stations suddenly powered up their engines and weapons. They were older vessels, pulled from Earth's reserves and upgraded with the best technology humanity could produce. They were not as large as Zektar warships, but they were fast and heavily armed, and they were positioned perfectly behind the enemy fleet. The hidden ships accelerated toward the Zektar formation, weapons charging. On the Crimson Fang, a tactical officer suddenly shouted a warning. War leader, 40 new contacts behind us. They are human ships. They are opening fire. Vrakdos spun toward the tactical display. Impossible. The scans showed only 20 human ships. Where did these others come from? Before anyone could answer, missiles struck the rear of the Zektar formation. 3 ships exploded immediately, their shields overwhelmed by the concentrated fire. 2 more took critical damage and began to list out of formation. The neat, organized Zektar fleet dissolved into chaos as ships tried to turn and face this unexpected threat. Rodriguez watched from the command center as his plan unfolded perfectly. The visible 20 ships charged forward, engaging the Zektar fleet from the front. The hidden 40 ships hit them from behind. The enemy was caught between 2 forces, unable to focus their superior firepower effectively. This is not a fair fight, Major Chen said with satisfaction. No, Rodriguez agreed. War never is. We did not start this fight, but we are damn well going to finish it. The space battle raged for 6 hours. The Zektar had more ships and heavier weapons, but the humans had surprise better tactics. And something the Zektar commanders could not understand. The human ships fought with perfect coordination, anticipating each other's movements, covering each other's weaknesses. They moved like a single organism with 60 bodies, flowing around the Zektar formation, striking weak points, retreating before counterattacks could land. War leader Vrakdos lost 15 ships in those 6 hours. 15 warships that had never been defeated in combat, destroyed by an enemy he had dismissed as harmless. He finally ordered a tactical retreat, pulling his remaining 35 ships back to regroup. The humans did not pursue. They reformed their own lines and waited. Vrakdos stared at the tactical display, his mind struggling to process what had happened. How did they do this? He said to no one in particular. They are prey animals. They have no natural weapons, no warrior culture. His chief strategist, a younger Zektar named Krelenix, spoke carefully. War leader, perhaps our intelligence was incomplete. Perhaps the humans are more dangerous than we believed. Vrakdos struck him hard enough to draw blood. We are Zektar. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. A few lucky shots do not change that. He pointed at the planet below. Land the ground forces. Secure the cities. Once we control the surface, their fleet will have to surrender or watch their people die. The landing craft launched from the remaining Zektar ships. 200,000 warriors descended toward Novaterra in massive transport vessels. They expected resistance, expected to fight for the cities. What they found instead was silence. The first landing craft touched down in Novaterra's capital city at dawn. The massive doors opened and Zektar warriors poured out, weapons ready, senses alert for enemies. The streets were empty. Buildings stood silent, their windows dark. There were no signs of life, no sounds of movement. It was as if the entire city had been abandoned. Commander Raksek led the first wave. He was a veteran of 30 campaigns, a warrior who had conquered a dozen worlds. He did not like what he was seeing. This is wrong, he said to his second in command. Where are the civilians? Where are the defenders? Search the buildings. Find them. His warriors spread out through the streets, breaking into homes and businesses. Searching for the humans they had come to conquer. They found empty rooms, abandoned possessions, food still in kitchens, but no people. In his underground command post, Captain Rodriguez watched through cameras hidden throughout the city. The Zektar were exactly where he wanted them. Spread out, confused, searching buildings one by one, he looked at Major Vasquez. Detonate sectors 1 through 5. Now, she pressed a series of buttons on her console. Throughout the capital city, explosives that had been carefully placed over 15 years of preparation began to detonate. Buildings collapsed onto Zektar warriors. Streets exploded upward, hurling soldiers through the air. Vehicles that had been left in strategic positions turned out to be massive bombs, their detonations tearing through entire city blocks. Commander Raksek was thrown to the ground by the first explosion. He looked up to see his warriors dying all around him, crushed by falling buildings, torn apart by explosions, buried in rubble. "All units fall back," he shouted into his communicator. "The city is trapped. Get out now." But there was nowhere to fall back to. The explosions had cut off their retreat routes. The Zektar warriors found themselves trapped in a city that was killing them from every direction. And then the shooting started. Human snipers had been positioned in the hills surrounding the city. They were far enough away to be out of immediate danger, but close enough for their advanced rifles to be lethal. They had clear lines of sight to the streets below, and they had been trained for this exact scenario for years. First Company, fire at will. Major Park ordered from his position overlooking the city. 200 rifles began firing in synchronized sequence. Each shot was aimed deliberate and accurate. Zektar warriors began dropping in the streets, shot from distances they could not effectively return fire from. Commander Raksek tried to organize a defense, but it was impossible. His warriors were taking fire from positions they could not see. In a city that kept exploding around them, with nowhere safe to retreat to, he called for air support. But the transport craft that tried to evacuate his troops were shot down by human anti-aircraft weapons hidden in the hills. In 3 hours, his force of 20,000 warriors was reduced to less than 5,000. He made the hardest decision of his career. All units, unconditional retreat. Break out any way you can and return to the landing zone. The surviving Zektar warriors fled the city in disarray, many of them wounded, all of them shocked by what they had experienced. They had come to conquer prey animals and instead found themselves hunted by something they did not understand. War leader Vrektos received the reports from the ground with mounting fury. 50,000 warriors, dead or wounded. The cities were death traps. The humans were nowhere to be found. His fleet had taken severe losses. This was supposed to be an easy conquest, a way to demonstrate Zektar's superiority. Instead, it was becoming a disaster. Tactical retreat, he finally ordered. All ships return to formation. We are withdrawing from this system. His officers stared at him in shock. A Zektar fleet had never retreated from a weaker enemy, but Vraktos could see what they could not. This enemy was not weaker. The humans had prepared for this fight while the Zektar had assumed victory. They had studied Zektar tactics and designed counters. They had hidden their true capabilities while learning everything about their enemy. They had won before the first shot was fired. The Zektar fleet limped away from Novaterra, leaving behind their dead and their pride. On the surface, Captain Rodriguez stood in the command center and watched them go. Around him, his officers were celebrating, hugging each other, shouting with joy and relief. But Rodriguez just stared at the display, his face calm. "We won," Major Vasquez said, standing beside him. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "This battle, yes. But the war is just beginning. The galaxy needs to understand what happened here, and Ambassador Chen is going to make sure they do." The Predator awakens. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened.
72 hours after the Zektar.
Retreat from Novaterra. Representatives from 200 species filled the council chamber, their conversations creating a cacophony of sound that High Counselor Vernock struggled to quiet. The rumors had spread quickly through Unity Prime. The Zektar Empire, defeated for centuries, had been repelled by humans. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive now demanded to know how such a thing was possible. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the central platform, waiting patiently for silence. She wore the same simple blue uniform she had worn at her first council appearance 15 years ago. But everything else had changed. The condescension was gone from the alien faces watching her. In its place was something she recognized immediately: fear mixed with respect. The expression of creatures who had just realized they had misjudged a threat. "Hi, Counselor Vernock," called the session to order. "Ambassador Chen has requested this emergency session to address the recent conflict at Novaterra." He looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Ambassador, the Council recognizes you. Please present your statement." Sarah bowed her head slightly, the same gesture of respect she had always shown. But when she spoke, her voice carried authority that had not been there before. Honored council members. 15 years ago, I stood on this platform and thanked you for accepting humanity into the Federation. I promised we would prove worthy of your faith. She paused, looking around the chamber. Today, I am here to explain how we kept that promise. She activated a holographic display that showed the battle for Nova Terra from multiple angles. The footage came from human military cameras, satellite surveillance, and even captured Zektar communications. It showed everything: the space battle, the evacuation, trapped cities, the sniper teams, complete defeat of a superior military force. The council watched in absolute silence. Species that had laughed at human weakness now saw human soldiers moving with lethal efficiency. Warriors who had mocked human fragility now saw human pilots executing maneuvers that defied expectations. Leaders who had called humans prey now watched those same humans hunting Zektar warriors through city streets. When the footage ended, Sarah spoke into the silence. For 15 years, the Federation has classified humanity as Class D, non-threatening herbivores. This classification was based on our physical appearance. No claws, no armor, no natural weapons. You looked at us and saw prey animals who had accidentally developed technology. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You were wrong. She pulled up biological data on humans, showing information that Dr. Webb had compiled over the years. This is what you should have seen. Humans are persistence predators. On our home world, we evolved to hunt by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can run longer than any other species on Earth. We can track wounded animals across continents. We can function without sleep for days when necessary. We heal faster than most species in this chamber. And most importantly, we never give up. Ambassador Thulix of the Maravi spoke up. But your physical characteristics, you have no natural weapons, no protective features. How does this make you predators? Sarah nodded at the question. Because predation is not just about physical strength. It is about intelligence, strategy, and cooperation. Humans are pack hunters. We evolved to work in groups, to communicate complex ideas, to trust each other completely. When human soldiers fight together, they become more than individuals. They become a single organism with many bodies. She showed footage of the sniper teams, each one knowing where the others were positioned without needing to communicate. She showed the space battle, human ships moving in perfect coordination. She showed the ground forces, soldiers covering each other's positions instinctively. This is what billions of years of evolution as pack predators created. We do not need to communicate because we understand each other at a fundamental level. Commander Vrektos stood from his seat in the gallery. His scales were scarred from the battle and his pride was wounded more deeply than his body. You speak of evolution and biology. You claim to be predators, but you hid your capabilities. You deceived the council. You pretended to be weak. Sarah turned to face him directly. Yes, we did. Because that is what intelligent predators do. They observe their environment, identify threats, and prepare accordingly. When we joined the Federation, we immediately recognized that the galaxy was dangerous. So we prepared for danger while appearing harmless. She walked to the edge of the platform, closer to where Vrektos stood. War leader, your people have conquered dozens of species. You have a reputation as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. You came to Nova Terra expecting an easy victory? What happened instead? Vrektos' jaw clenched. We underestimated you. Sarah nodded. Yes, you did. And that is the lesson the galaxy needs to learn. Humans are persistence predators. We do not win by being stronger or faster or more heavily armed. We win by being smarter, by preparing better, and by never, ever giving up. Dr. Webb appeared on the display via quantum link, standing in his laboratory on Nova Terra. Good afternoon, council members. I am Dr. Marcus Webb, humanity's chief xenobiologist. I have spent 15 years studying every species in the Federation. He pulled up detailed files showing biological analysis of dozens of alien species. I know the chemical composition of Zektar nervous systems. I know the sonic frequencies that disrupt Velen crystalline structures. I know the atmospheric requirements of every species that attacked human colonies. I know your weaknesses better than you know them yourselves. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Species that had shared biological data freely now realized they had given humans a complete map of their vulnerabilities. High Counselor Venac struggled to restore order. This is highly irregular. Such information was shared in the spirit of scientific cooperation. Dr. Webb nodded, and we appreciate that cooperation. We used the information exactly as we said we would for research. We simply did not mention that military applications were part of that research. Captain Rodriguez appeared on another section of the display, standing in the Novaterra Command Center. I am Captain James Rodriguez, Commander of Human Defense Forces. For 15 years, we have studied every battle in galactic history. We analyzed Zektar tactics, Velen defensive strategies, Maravi scouting techniques. We learned from your victories and your defeats. Then we trained our soldiers to counter every tactic we observed. He showed footage of human soldiers training in various environments, practicing scenarios that specifically countered known alien combat methods. The Zektar fight in rigid formations, expecting direct confrontation. We used guerrilla tactics and asymmetric warfare. The Velen rely on overwhelming firepower from static positions. We used mobility and misdirection. Every species has a preferred method of warfare. We learned them all and developed counters. Ambassador Chen continued. The Federation has operated on the assumption that physical strength determines power. You have created a hierarchy based on natural weapons, armor, and size. Humans do not fit that hierarchy because we developed different advantages. Intelligence, endurance, cooperation, and most importantly, adaptability. When you placed us in the worst territory available, we adapted. When you denied us protection, we protected ourselves. When you attacked us, we won. A Velen counselor stood, his crystalline body flickering with agitation. What you describe is dangerous. If every species begins hiding their capabilities, the Federation cannot function. How can we maintain peace if we cannot trust the classifications and data we collect? Sarah looked at him steadily. Counselor, the Federation maintained peace through strength. Strong species like the Zektar were allowed to do whatever they wanted because no one could stop them. Weak species were left to fend for themselves. That is not peace. That is predation disguised as order. She gestured at the display showing Novaterra. Humanity offers a different model. We are strong enough to defend ourselves and others. We are willing to share our capabilities with species that need protection. And we will stand against any species that tries to conquer the weak, regardless of how powerful that species believes itself to be. High Counselor Vrinok spoke carefully. You are proposing a fundamental change to how the Federation operates. That would require extensive negotiation and agreement from all member species. Sarah nodded. I understand. But while the Council debates, humanity will be taking action. Any species that wants our protection need only ask. Any species that threatens our allies will face the same response the Zektar encountered. We are not asking for permission. We are informing you of our intentions. The council chamber exploded with reactions. Some species were outraged at this presumption. Others were clearly interested in the offer of protection. A few, like the Maravi, looked hopeful for the first time in years. Commander Vrektos spoke again, his voice strained. You speak as if you have already won. As if the Zektar Empire will simply accept defeat. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We will not bow to mammals who evolve from prey. Sarah turned back to him. War leader, you have already bowed. You retreated from Novaterra. Your fleet is damaged. Your warriors are demoralized. Your reputation is shattered. If you want to attack us again, we will be ready. But this time, we will not wait for you to come to us. We will bring the war to your territory. We will show your people what human persistence really means. Vrektos stared at her, his yellow eyes wide with something he had never felt before. Not just fear, but the recognition that he was facing a superior predator. The Zektar Empire sues for peace, he said finally, the words clearly painful. We will pay reparations for the attack on Nova Terra. We will withdraw our claims to the outer territories. We ask only that humans honor the ceasefire. The chamber fell silent. A Zektar commander asking for peace was unprecedented. Sarah considered the request carefully, then nodded. Humanity accepts. We do not want endless war. We want security and respect. If the Zektar Empire can provide both, we have no quarrel. Over the following weeks, the galaxy reorganized itself around a new reality. Humanity was not prey. They were apex predators who had been hiding their true nature until the right moment. Species that had been threatened by stronger neighbors suddenly had an option: human protection. Ambassador Chen found herself receiving requests from dozens of worlds. The Moravi were first grateful to finally have an ally strong enough to deter aggression. 3 other species from the outer territories quickly followed. Within a month, 12 species had signed defense pacts with humanity. Dr. Webb's research facility expanded massively. Scientists from allied species came to Nova Terra to share information and collaborate on projects. The biological data that had seemed so innocent now became the foundation for a defensive network that could protect dozens of worlds. Medicines were developed, vaccines were created, and technologies were shared freely among the Alliance. Captain Rodriguez established training facilities on Nova Terra and 3 other worlds. Officers from allied species came to learn human tactics. At first, they were skeptical. Human methods seemed chaotic compared to traditional military formations. But as they practiced, they began to understand. Human tactics relied on individual initiative within a framework of shared objectives. Every soldier was trained to think and adapt, not just follow orders. Governor Blake oversaw the reconstruction of Nova Terra's surface cities. The damaged buildings were rebuilt stronger than before with even better defensive capabilities. But he also ensured that the cities were beautiful, with parks and schools and cultural centers. Nova Terra was not just a fortress. It was a home worth defending. On Unity Prime, the Federation Council debated endlessly about how to respond to humanity's rise. Some species wanted to sanction humans for deception. Others wanted to embrace the new alliance structure. Most simply wanted to understand how they had been so completely fooled. High Counselor Vernac called Sarah to his private chambers again. 3 months after the battle, he looked even older now, the weight of leadership clearly taking its toll. Ambassador Chen, I need to understand something. When you first arrived here 15 years ago, did you know this would happen? Did you plan for war with the Zektar? Sarah sat down across from him. We did not plan for war specifically with the Zektar, but we planned for war with someone. The galaxy is full of predators, High Counselor. We are predators too. When 2 predators meet, they either establish dominance or they fight. We knew fighting would eventually be necessary. Vernac shook his head slowly. You were so patient. 15 years of accepting insults, of being treated as inferiors. How did you maintain that facade? Sarah smiled slightly. Because we were not pretending to be inferior, High Counselor. We genuinely had much to learn from the Federation. Our technology was primitive compared to yours. Our knowledge of the galaxy was limited. So we learned everything we could while preparing for the inevitable conflict. Patience is one of humanity's greatest strengths. She leaned forward. But here is what you need to understand. We do not want to dominate the galaxy. We do not want an empire. We want to be left alone to live in peace with our allies. If the Federation can accept that, then humanity will be a loyal member. We will contribute, cooperate, and defend the Federation's interests. But if the Federation tries to control us or threatens our allies, we will respond the same way we responded to the Zektar. Vernac nodded slowly. I believe the Council is beginning to understand that. The vote next week will likely grant humanity full membership status with no restrictions. Your defensive alliance will be officially recognized. Sarah stood and bowed respectfully. Thank you, High Counselor. I know this has been difficult for you personally. You have been fair to humanity, even when others were not. Vernac waved away the thanks. I simply wish I had understood your nature earlier. It would have saved everyone a great deal of pain. After she left, Vernox stood by his window again, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was establishing itself as a new power in the galaxy. Not through conquest or intimidation, but through strength tempered with restraint. It was a new model, and he found himself hoping it would succeed. On Nova Terra. Sarah's nephew asked her a question during a family dinner. He was 8 years old, born on the colony world. He had heard stories about the battle, but did not fully understand them. Aunt Sarah, why did the aliens think we were weak? Sarah put down her fork and thought about her answer carefully. Because we look weak compared to them. We do not have claws or armor. We are not as big or strong. So they made assumptions based on appearance. Her nephew frowned. But that is stupid. We are not weak. Sarah smiled. No, we are not. But sometimes it is useful to let others think you are weak. It gives you time to prepare and makes them careless. Her nephew considered this. So we pretended to be weak so they would not be scared of us. Something like that, yes. Sarah ruffled his hair. But now they know the truth. Now they understand that humans are not prey. We are predators. And predators take care of their pack. The boy looked worried. Does that mean we have to be mean? Sarah shook her head firmly. No, being a predator does not mean being cruel. It means being strong enough to protect yourself and others. We fight when we have to, but we prefer peace. That is what makes us different from the Zektar. We choose when to use our strength. That night, Sarah stood on the balcony of her quarters, looking up at Nova Terra's purple sky. 2 moons hung overhead, casting silver light across the landscape. In the distance, she could see the lights of the capital city, rebuilt and thriving. Human children played in those streets now, growing up in a world their parents had fought to defend. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity was not prey. They were persistent predators who had evolved to hunt, to endure, and to never give up. They had worn the mask of weakness for 15 years, learning everything they could about their potential enemies, while preparing for inevitable conflict. But the lesson was not complete. The galaxy still needed to learn that human strength came with human values. Humans fought to protect, not to conquer. They used their predatory instincts to defend the weak, not to prey upon them. They had become guardians, because that was what the galaxy needed. And humans had always been good at adapting to fill necessary roles. Ambassador Chen returned to Earth 6 months later for a brief visit. She had not seen her homeworld in 15 years. The blue skies and green forests seemed impossibly vibrant after so long on Nova Terra. She visited her old academy, speaking to cadets who would soon join the diplomatic corps or military service. A young cadet asked her the question she had been expecting. Ambassador, do you think we will have to fight again? Sarah looked at the eager faces watching her. She saw hope and fear in equal measure. The galaxy has seen what happens when they underestimate humanity. Many species will choose cooperation over confrontation now. But there will always be those who believe strength gives them the right to dominate others. So yes, we will probably fight again. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But remember this, we do not fight because we love war. We fight because we love peace enough to defend it. We are predators by evolution, but we are guardians by choice. That choice defines who we are as a species. The cadet nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. So we are the protectors now. Sarah smiled. Yes, and that is a responsibility we must take seriously. The galaxy is watching to see what humanity does with its newfound power. We must show them that human predators are different. We hunt those who threaten the innocent. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We build rather than destroy. That is the legacy I want to leave. On Unity Prime, the Federation Council voted to grant humanity full membership with no restrictions. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. High Counselor Vernock announced the decision with obvious relief. It was the beginning of a new era for the Federation. One where strength was measured not just by military might, but by the willingness to use that might responsibly. Commander Rectos attended the ceremony representing the Zektar Empire. He approached Sarah afterward, his massive form towering over her. She met his eyes calmly, showing no fear. "Ambassador Chen," he said formally, "the Zektar Empire acknowledges your species' strength. You have earned our respect." Sarah bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Commander. Humanity respects the Zektar's warrior culture. We hope our peoples can find common ground moving forward." Rakdos nodded slowly. "We have learned a valuable lesson from you. Appearance does not determine capability. We will not make that mistake again." He paused, then added something that clearly cost him pride to say. "You are worthy predators. The galaxy is safer with you watching over it." Years passed. The Human Defensive Alliance grew to include 30 species. Novaterra became a center of learning and cooperation, where different species worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The Zektar Empire honored their peace agreement and gradually began to participate in the alliance, their warriors training alongside human soldiers in a spirit of mutual respect. Dr. Webb's research saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. Captain Rodriguez's tactical innovations became standard military doctrine for defensive operations. Governor Blake's city designs were copied on other colony worlds, creating communities that were both beautiful and secure. Ambassador Sarah Chen eventually retired at age 70, having served humanity for nearly 3 decades. She returned to Novaterra, where the colonists honored her with a statue in the central plaza. The inscription read simply, "She wore the mask so we could be free." Her replacement as ambassador was her former aide, a young woman named Jennifer Martinez, who had grown up on Novaterra. Jennifer had learned from Sarah's example, understanding that diplomacy sometimes required patience, sometimes required strength, and always required knowing which one the situation demanded on her last day as ambassador. Sarah gave one final speech to the Federation Council. She stood on the familiar platform where she had stood so many times before. "Honored council members, 15 years ago I came to you as a representative of an unknown species. You classified us as prey, as weak, as non-threatening. Today I leave you as a representative of a species that has proven itself capable of defending not just our own worlds, but the worlds of our allies." She looked around the chamber, seeing faces that had become familiar over the years. "But I want to be clear about something. Humanity did not prove itself through violence. We proved ourselves through preparation, through cooperation, and through the willingness to stand up for what is right. Yes, we fought when necessary. Yes, we showed that we are predators. But we also showed that predators can choose to be guardians." She smiled, and this time the warmth was genuine. "The galaxy is better now than when I first arrived. More species feel safe. Fewer species fear their neighbors. That is not because humanity is strong. That is because humanity chose to use our strength to protect rather than dominate. That is the legacy I hope to leave." The council gave her a standing ovation, something they had never done for any ambassador before. As Sarah left the chamber for the last time, Ambassador Thelix of the Moravi walked with her. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything you have done for my people and so many others." Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for being the first to believe in us. The alliance would not exist without the Moravi's trust." They walked together to the transport bay, where Sarah's ship waited to take her home to Novaterra. As she boarded, she looked back at Unity Prime one last time. It had been her home for decades. It's a place where she had worn the mask of weakness while preparing for humanity's emergence. As a galactic power, the mask was gone now. Humanity stood revealed as apex predators, persistence hunters who never gave up and never forgot. But more importantly, humanity had revealed itself as something the galaxy desperately needed. Guardians who would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Protectors who used their strength to create peace rather than enforce dominance. That was humanity's true gift to the galaxy, not their ability to fight, but their choice of what to fight for. On Novaterra, children played in parks built over underground shelters. They learned about the battle that had saved their world, but they also learned about the peace that followed. They grew up knowing they were protected by the strongest military force in their sector, but also knowing that strength came with responsibility. Human children understood from an early age that being a predator meant choosing carefully what to hunt. The purple sky overhead was peaceful now, and the twin suns cast warm light on a world that had proven itself worthy of protection. In the years that followed, historians would debate exactly when humanity had become a true galactic power. Some pointed to the Battle of Novatera. Others pointed to the formation of the Defensive Alliance. A few argued it was the moment Sarah Chen first stood before the Federation Council, already planning 15 years ahead. But the truth was simpler. Humanity had always been a galactic power. They had simply waited for the right moment to prove it. They had worn the mask of weakness while learning everything they needed to know. They had prepared with the patience of persistent predators who understood that the best hunts were the ones where the prey never saw you coming until it was too late. The Zektar had come to Novatera expecting to crush weak prey. Instead, they encountered apex predators who had been pretending to be sheep. The galaxy would never make that mistake again. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as guardians. And the galaxy slept safer, knowing that human predators were standing watch, patient and persistent, ready to defend the innocent and stand against the darkness. The hunt was over. The watch had begun, and humanity would never stop, never rest, never give up their duty to protect those who had once looked down upon them. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be a predator who chose to be a guardian.